Okay, so for our project, we did it over Rent the Runway as the apparel portion, and then an Apple Watch over the non-apparel portion. So for Rent the Runway, how they've digitally transformed the segment of the industry they operate in is that Rent the Runway is said to be a business that's dressed as a fashion company, because it has the bones of a tech startup. And it is also the first company to give women the flexibility to rent clothes rather than own them. And then I have a quote from the chief analytics officer, and it says that we were creating a completely new category where the customer itself is changing their behavior while we're figuring out how to make the back end logistics and the equations actually work. So how they do business is they do it based off of subscription levels. So some may use it only to rent a single dress for occasion, whereas others, they can choose an unlimited subscription that allows them to rotate their wardrobe every time they send something back. So over time, I would say in this industry, we have progressed from going to a storefront to purchase the actual outfit to being able to order clothes online. And because of Rent the Runway, they created this category to rent clothing. They started that, and so now you can get like monthly clothing subscription boxes and other clothing rental services. Some challenges that they've faced in the progress. The chief analytic officer says that since the beginning, it's taken a lot of trial and error to find the right way to progress the company to its full potential. So they basically just use the scientific method, and that's how they have been able to figure out a lot of their stuff. But he said that 8 years of knowledge, really where his dad has played a very critical role in figuring out how to take those units of inventory with different fabrications and different uses and figure out the optimal way to take care of them. So by doing that, we're able to prolong how long actually it can last, and then we're able to get more value out of the units of inventory. But also another thing has been fit, because they can't go in and try them on themselves. Fit has just been a big issue that they're trying to work out. But as to how they can ensure continued digital success and stand out, I feel like they have a lot of brand recognition because they are the first company to incorporate rental services. But their marketing tactics that they use make it the most widely known and accredited company. But also social media aesthetics. A lot of bloggers, celebrities, etc., people like that, they don't want to have an outfit repeat on their Instagram, and so they resort to renting off Rent the Runway so that each photo they post, they're wearing something different than from the post before, and so on. So that's become a big thing in our culture today. But also, it's seen as a better alternative to buying tons of articles of clothing to only wear once, so it's better for the environment, cuts down on waste. As for their marketing strategies, it's an omni-channel commerce. They also have a very strong online presence. The website is very easy to use, and their branding is easily identifiable and aesthetically pleasing to the trends of today. They use lots of text content and media content, so if you go on their website, there's lots of visuals that they use, and they also have a video on the homepage, which makes it more visually pleasing. And then they also do a lot of emails about if they're doing a certain sale or certain items are on sale and stuff like that. But it also looks at what you've rented in the past and tries to pull pieces that are similar that you might be interested in as well, to get people to keep coming back to their website to rent off of it. And it also has a squeeze page. And as well, it uses the cookie system. So if you search it on your laptop or computer, ads will pop up when you go to a different website. I think that earned media is also a big thing with Rent the Runway. You'll hear a lot of bloggers on YouTube talk about it on their channels, and on the website they have quotes from customers and about their experience with the company. And also the unlimited subscription is $159 a month, and so compared to how much people spend on clothing items in one shopping trip, this price is relatively decent and reasonable. So I feel like that's another advantage to their company. And then some more analytics. They're cross-functional, so everything is embedded together, and a quote is, data is like woven into the DNA of all of those teams. But how they can improve, recently they've started doing home goods rental services as well as offering children's sizes. And they also now provide drop up areas to return clothes if you don't want to go through this shipping process. But dropping it off is super easy and quick. And so that's the analytics of Rent the Runway.
Okay, so for the non-apparel brand, like we said, we did Apple Watch, or I did Apple Watch. So to understand, I guess, like kind of like the history of how the Apple Watch came to be, I kind of had to go back and look at the history of the digital watch in general. So the world's first digital watch was called the Pulsar Time Computer. And actually, when the digital watch first came into existence, it actually wasn't that popular. Like people thought it was weird because they were used to analog, like they were used to seeing the hands, and they were not used to seeing like the digital screen. They thought it was strange and weird, so it wasn't popular at first. So that was in about 1970 when the company Hamilton when they came out with attempted to come out with this watch. And so it took a while for like people to like really like get on to like the digital watch. But once people did, it was a really big deal. So like it was a really big sensation when people start to kind of use it and like be open to the idea of it. So basically, once that's kind of the history of like what happened with the digital watch, and eventually people started going completely digital with watches. I read an article where a teacher had said that all the clocks in their elementary schools were digital. They weren't even analog anymore. So like he said, kids were all they were going to know was digital. So that's kind of the history on the digital watches. Now that that's done, on to like the actual Apple Watch. So it was really the first Apple Watch was released on April 24th, 2015. And I actually didn't know this, but the goal of the product was to complement an iPhone, it was to complement an iPhone, but the makers of the Apple Watch, they noticed that they wanted to create something where the purpose of the wrist mount technology was basically like they wanted to come up with something where people didn't have to check their phones, because since everybody's so like into their phones, and like they wanted product where people didn't have to do that. They wanted to create something where people were like more in tune to like what was going around them. They weren't so into their phones. And so basically they said kind of their idea behind this was, quote, your phone is ruining your life, like the rest of us. And everyone at Apple, they are the subject to the tyranny of the buzz, the constant checking, the long list of nagging notifications. We're so connected with technology now, and people are carrying their phones with them and looking at the screen so much. So they want to come up with this watch, and they want to do something where it's a level of engagement, but like they want to have engagement, but not so much where you want to be like in the moment. You still want to live in the moment, even with the watch. So to do the first prototype they came out with for the Apple Watch was basically just an iPhone rigged with a Velcro strap, and so that was kind of like the first prototype they came out with. And so as they started to create the watch, they started coming up with all these different ideas behind like how they could with the features and everything. So one of the first features was you could basically speak into the phone, but that they ended up simplifying that a little bit because you didn't want it to be so complex as the iPhone. They made features where if you want it, they didn't want to make it so complicated. Where like if it was, they didn't want to make it so complicated where it was an iPhone. So they kind of simplified the features to the point where you can still check to see if you have a text message and everything, but it's just not as engaged. It's not as, I guess, like distracting as an iPhone when people always look at their phones. So basically, like this kind of the Apple Watch, it kind of when it came out, it kind of basically it was popular when it came out. Like people caught on to it very well. They really liked it, and even like the makers were saying they like it because it's not so distracting as an iPhone. And so when they were making it, as I said before, they made sure to put features into it that we're not. There's a feature where you can, if you get a text message, you can easily look at it, and if you don't want to see it, you just flip your wrist up if you don't want to see it. If you do want to see it, you just keep your wrist the same way it is, and you can look at the message. But it's not as, I guess, invasive. Like the Apple Watch is not as invasive as the iPhone, and it's not definitely not as distracting. And so they came up with, even as so far as like the sounds and the notifications, they went very far as to make sure even the sounds and notifications, those weren't, and the vibrations, those weren't distracting as well. Let's see. So even so with that, because people are so diverse, they want different things. So there's different level. They came up with different types of the same watch. Still have the same features, but it was just like different levels. So it was called the Sport, the Watch, and the Edition. And they were just all, since everybody's so different, everybody wants something different. They came up with these three types so people can have a range of options that they want. And with that kind of turned them not even into just a technology maker, but kind of that made that secured their, with the Apple Watch, that definitely secured their place in kind of the fashion world, because now people wear the Apple Watches not even so much for technology, but just to make a fashion statement. Like, it's not even about really technology anymore. They just want to be able to say they have an Apple Watch. So basically, like, the whole point behind their watch was, the whole point behind the Apple Watch is because they want to be able to make an impact on our relationship with our devices. They want us to, and I didn't know that. I didn't realize that was the idea behind the watch, was that they were trying to get us not so attached to our phones. They wanted, because since technology distracts us from the things that we should be paying attention to, they wanted to create something that could counter that and still allow you to be connected, but not so connected where you don't know what's going on around you. And so that's kind of like their idea behind that. It's pretty sexy because of that idea. It is very popular. I don't really see the Apple Watch going out of business anytime, just because people like the idea of being able to check their watch without actually being so distracted as they are with the phone. People like that, and there's no other company. There's not. I mean, Apple's basically a superior company. I mean, I don't see. I honestly don't see anybody coming up and just being a huge, big competitor for them, just because everybody knows Apple. Everybody knows Apple's a superior company, not just in watches, but with phones, with laptops. I mean, they're like number one in the technology era right now. Like, in my opinion, no one's above Apple. And so, I don't see in the future. I don't see Apple really getting any that much competition with this product, just because Apple is such a well-known product, and eventually with this watch, this can lead into other areas. I mean, eventually it's going to get to the point where Apple's probably making cars and vehicles and all kinds of other stuff, not even just so much technology. They're probably going to be going and making cars eventually and other things. So this making a watch kind of opens the door for other things, and just now that they've ventured into that a few years ago, they can venture into other things. So that's basically like the history of the Apple Watch and what the current state of it.